This portion of the show is being brought to you by Ed's new deep dish pizza. The pizza that is so deep you're required to wear a life jacket while eating it just in case you happen to fall in.
What grows in the forest? Trees? Sure. Know what else grows in the forest? Our imagination, our sense of wonder, and our family bonds grow too. Because when we disconnect from this and connect with this, we reconnect with each other and build family memories we will carry with us forever. The forest is closer than you think. Find a forest near you and start exploring at discovertheforest.org. It's easy. Just put in your zip code to find family-friendly outdoor destinations near you. You'll also find guides to free activities, games, and amazing forest facts. Give the magic of the outdoors to your kids and reconnect with your family. Find a forest near you at discovertheforest.org. That's discovertheforest.org. Brought to you by the United States Forest Service and the Ad Council.
What's up? This is James Cruz. You listen to KTLK The Fringe FM.
Welcome to Lighting the Void.
All broadcasting live from a shack on a hill in the Mossy Creek bottoms of Cane Creek, Arkansas. This is Lighting the Void, and I'm your host, Joe Roop, and we're live on the Fringe FM. Super sorry about the late start we had for tonight. I had more internet issues, man. We got the fiber optics going out here. So they're coming back in the morning to fix it, but I think we're up for tonight. We are live on the Fringe FM. It is February the 6th, and we're going to continue our discussion. We're getting to the end of this book, what happens after we die. And I got these spectacles to see if I can help me read this a little better. It does, like, it helps me tremendously read, but then I can't see nothing else. So I have to, like, shop these, like, cheap sunglasses, not sunglasses, but eye specs to figure out, like, what the hell is going on with my eyeballs. But we're going to talk about the last days tonight in this book. And this series, as you know, we started this series a couple of weeks ago. Even though we talk about we talk about a lot of things like the occult, the magic, all kinds of stuff. We talk about all kinds of cool stuff on this broadcast. But the thing is this guy reached out to me that has been a listener of the show, and he's been dealing with ALS. What's up, Emily? What's up, Ava, Jane? I couldn't get it to hook up to Facebook. So you guys, if you want to listen, you're going to have to come over to YouTube. I think Facebook's like mad at me because we're playing radio music. I told them that they can give them money. So what I do is when they ask me, they're like, well, this is a copyrighted stuff. Do you want to give the money to other people? Like, they try to scare you. And I'm like, well, yeah, it's their copyrighted material. Give them the money if they get it. So, but we're covered on the radio station, so that's good. But anyways, I want to talk technical stuff with you guys tonight. What I want to talk about is this book. I want everybody to know, first and foremost, that the reason why we're reviewing this book is for a listener, right, who has ALS. He's facing the end stage of his life, and as I'm reading this book, I'm trying to get people to come on the show to talk about life after death and the NDE stuff. And I also want to thank Robert, who invited me on to Typical Skeptic podcast. That was really cool of him. That dude is a very genuine guy, and he had me on his show, and we got into some pretty deep conversations. So go check out his podcast too. I'll leave a link to his podcast and his YouTube channel in here. So I'm going to try not to use these glasses tonight if I can help it. You know, take the Superman mask off and see if we can get into this. If you want to call in, you can at any point in time tonight. And I know we ended on that chapter last week where the guy was talking about, I think he was really pushing like sacred sexuality, and it was weird. So I want to save that for a different show. There's a spot at the end of that chapter that I want to read and finish. But I went ahead and skipped to this one called The Last Days. And I don't know if we should be able to get through it. Now, what I do with audiobooks, if you've listened to them, on YouTube specifically, is that I like to talk and have a discussion. So it's like reading. It's like a book club almost. So I like reading the book sometimes and then just discussing stuff with people, you know. Or if you call in, or the chat room, or whatever's on my mind, or whatever. And then later on, I'll kind of put it all together and post it to YouTube as a book. Maybe, if I think it's worth it. I'm not so sure this book is worth it yet. Okay, so I'm making my mind up about that. Even though I think it's a very entertaining book. I think they should make a Netflix series out of it. But other than that, I don't know. Like, I don't see how a lot of this stuff could be true. But anyways, blah, 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 right? We're going to talk about the last days here. And if you want to listen to the live audio broadcast, which what I'm trying to get in the routine of doing is doing a live music show Monday nights on the Fringe FM, which is just a radio broadcast, right? Regular music, like a normal radio show, and then Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, here, but this Monday we didn't get to do it because of all the internet stuff that's going on. What's up, Marla? Word salad. And all you guys in the Telegram, if you're listening, and Discord, wherever you're listening from, I hope Genevieve makes it over here. If any of you guys are friends with her, and Chris and the people that listen on Facebook, tell them that I couldn't hook up to it, if you can tell them. All right, so let's get into this. This is chapter 26, The Last Days. And this book, again, is called War in Heaven, right? By Kyle Griffith. I tried to find this guy. I couldn't find him. So, and just to recap, he's talking to a spirit, right? So he's talking to, quote, a spirit that's giving him these answers. Now, we know better than to judge that because all of our texts and religious and spiritual texts and stuff like that have come from spirits. Some of them are fascinating. All right. Let's see. This was the last day. So question, he's asking the spirit. He says, before you start your discussion of the last days, I'd like to know more about the predictions of Nostradamus, and I've never believed it's possible to predict the future very accurately. Yet his prophetic poems have always impressed me a great deal. And the spirit answers him and says, well, the predictions of Nostradamus are extremely deceptive. Oh. The people who think he was able to predict events like the French Revolution and the Second World War are wrong. Most of the quatrains that seem to have come true contain specific details that match historical events by sheer chance. For example, one of the latest to come true involves a quatrain that tells just pick a different word, man, please, that tells how one from France will depose the Shah of Iran. And since the leader of the recent Iranian revolution did in fact come out of exile in France to depose the Shah, the prediction did come true in a sense, but we assure you this was pure coincidence. Yeah, I mean, I can see what he's talking about there because, like, if I was going to write a book and predict the future, you know, I would say stuff like that. Well, there's this leader that's going to take over this leader. You don't really give a time that it's going to happen. I'm going to have to put these things on. So he asks the spirit, he says, well, let's see. There we go. I've always felt the same way about the predictions of historical events, the time of Nostradamus and the present. What has impressed me are his visual images of modern technologies. Some of his verses contain what seems to be accurate description of airplanes, submarines, torpedoes, and guided missiles, conventional and nuclear bombings, chemical and biological warfare, etc. And the spirit answers him and says, well, Nostradamus had visions of all these things that were quite accurate, but his had nothing to do with prophecy. Physical technology develops along similar lines on many different worlds, and the images he described were taken from historical records of some advanced civilization. So then he says to the spirit, he says, well, in other words, he had past life memories that included the equivalent of historical movie footage of the development of technology. And the spirit answers him and says, yeah. And he also received the sum of the images from extraterrestrial spirits sent here especially to do that particular job. Yeah. I don't know if I buy the extraterrestrial thing so much. Not saying there's not extraterrestrials, just in the context that he's putting it here in this thing. Bet you $1 to a dime before we get to the, and I haven't read this, but before we get to the end of the chapter, he's going to bring up religion or women in some sense again, probably. It's good to question books. I don't care who's the author. Don't ever, because then you just go around repeating what people think, and then you don't have a brain for yourself, right? He says, however it looks, and he's asking the spirit this, as if his predictions that the last days on earth will occur at the end of the 20th century may very well come true. How do you explain this? Ooh, here we go. This might get down to some brass tacks about how wrong or right he is. And the spirit answers him and says, well, this had nothing to do with his visions about the development of technology. The information was supplied to him by the invisible college and was simply an educated guess and based on our knowledge of the development of our civilizations. However, it is important to realize that what was predicted was not the last days themselves, but only the potential for entering them. Earth is obviously at that point right now, but we still cannot predict exactly what will happen next or when. The situation is extremely complex, both strategically and ethically. And to some extent, we are forced to wait for events to determine their own cause. Well, isn't that convenient, right? Because this is one of those things where you could actually prove somebody wrong, right? Like if you were to read this book later and nothing came true about it, and you say, well, then it's BS. It's the same thing with Edgar Cayce, but I don't think Edgar Cayce was off. Like maybe he was picking up on some energy or something, but he predicted a lot of stuff that didn't come true. And, they said the world was going to end in the 90s. They said it was going to end in 2000. Then there was the 2012 thing. So to me, it's like, I wonder when people are going to realize that the stuff they're reading is mainly metaphors or interpretations, right? Like that's what it is. It's interpretations of symbols and metaphors. And the land's not going to flatten out. There's nothing that's going to be flying in. Don't get mad at me. This is just my thoughts. There's nothing that's going to be flying in on a white horse between the clouds and all the stuff. It's all like metaphors, like mythology and stuff and archetypes. It doesn't mean it's not powerful, though. So he says to the spirit, it looks to me as if the advanced extraterrestrial civilizations that are manipulating the evolution of earthly society are divided into two factions with conflicting goals. The Elohim are here to assist in the birth of new gods, and the space people are here to create a new civilization similar to their own. And guess what the Spirit says, right? The Spirit says, this is completely correct. And it's difficult. It is a difficult situation, a difficult political situation. The Elohim have a strong claim here because of the astral technology that their ancestors left on this planet long ago. But they also want to maintain a good relationship with us. So they will allow us to found an advanced civilization of individual humans on Earth if possible. There is no emotional animosity between the two factions and a complex set of rules to determine how the situation is handled. And in one sense, the Earth people themselves will determine the fate of their own world. Exactly what do you mean, he says to the Spirit. If a major nuclear war occurs before Earth has established variable space colonies, no advanced individual civilization will develop here. And if such colonies are established, the fate of hundreds of millions of individual souls depends on the course of history from now until the last days. If the Earth is capable of sustaining human life after the last days, many more people can be saved than if the new civilization is forced to live in space. Okay. It's kind of broad, but all right. It's kind of a general statement. I mean, any one of us could have said that. What's up, Bryce? Glad you're here, brother. Any one of us could have said that, right? We could have said the same thing. Let's see. So he asked the Spirit, he says, well, this brings me to a subject I really don't want to think about, but it's so obvious from everything you said so far that I do have to ask about it. The population of Earth is now here we go to population control, right? The population of Earth is now well over 5 billion. How many of them have a reasonable chance of surviving as individuals? I already know that the majority will be assimilated into the new gods as they develop, and I find this concept absolutely appalling. So remember that, he asked, is there really any difference between such fate and simply being devoured by theocratic spirits? So remember that this guy is saying that the gods and all the gods that we've ever worshipped, from Jehovah, whatever, they were all created by human spirits that have passed away into the astral realm that kind of fuse their souls with a massive elemental being or egregore. And so they don't have to reincarnate. They don't have to take any more chances here. They can just call themselves a god. Oh. So not the Elohim. Whoops. So the Spirit says, the Elohim say there is a difference. People at a low stage of spiritual development who become part of a God do not die, but retain the potential to incarnate on some other world in the future and continue their evolution. So then he asked the Spirit, he said, well, this means you're admitting that the majority of the people now alive on earth do not have the potential of becoming like you. But when he says like you, he means the invisible college. But must cast their lot with the Elohim and gods, or else be devoured by theocrats and their animalistic elementals. Quick answer from the Spirit, and he says, yes. So then he asked him, he says, do people who have not evolved spiritually over the course of many earthly lives have a chance of determining which fate awaits them during the last days? I saw a big thing on that on Facebook today where people were arguing about stuff for Revelations. So the Spirit says, yeah, most people who die while the new gods are forming will survive. The more advanced will survive as individuals, and the rest will be assimilated into gods. However, those already in theocratic bands or animalistic elementals will not survive. That is why we originally had you simply warn your readers about theocracy and stop there. This alone would be enough to save the majority of Earth people at a low stage of spiritual development. As long as such people avoid theocratic enslavement after death, they stand an excellent chance of survival. There you go. So if there's any of you that think that this could remotely be true, so even if you're I mean, I can see you great with these, but they give me a headache. I got to figure something out there. So even if you're not developed, you can, just don't be a fool. Don't be nobody's fool. Okay. So he says, he's asking the Spirit, he says, why are you complicating the issue by making the rest of the information in this book public? And he answers, it says, well, the main reason is that theocrats have already communicated much of it to living people, but I'm in a form that serves their interest, not those of the Elohim and space people. It is no longer possible for us to say that gods do not exist and that people should strive to survive death as individuals and reincarnate. It's no longer possible to say that gods do not exist and that people should strive. I mean, why didn't he just come out and entitle that the name of this book, right? Like, gods do not exist. Believe me, I'm talking to a spirit that's telling me the truth. I mean, instead he had to, it's kind of like clickbait in the 90s. You title the book War in Heaven, and people think that they're about to find out the truth. I wonder how many Christians bought this book and then started reading it and were like, oh, hell, what is this? Jane says, how is this different from Christianity then? Either buddy up with the Elohim or get devoured by the theocrats. And Ava says, I thought the astral is thought responsive, so whatever believe you. Yeah, so there's mixed messages there for sure, right? Like, a lot of people say it's thought responsive. But think about this, man. Like, if this is the realm of our imagination, so or consciousness, where we're all connected. Now, I'm not talking about the out of body experience and like, which I think is like a part of that. That's a deep, complicated subject. But there is a space, right, where this whole space is illusory. But it's also the place where all of our dreams exist, all of our thoughts and elemental forms exist. This whole place is illusory. So why would you even think that anything, in my opinion, that you run into in this place could possibly be true, right? Like, you have to see it for what it is. If any of you guys have had psychedelic experiences or out of body experiences, then you understand what I'm talking about, right? Lucid dreams, maybe, but mainly a real OBE, NDE, or heavy psychedelic experience. Let's see. Why are you complicating the issue? That's what he's saying. People should strive to survive death as okay. So he says, please clarify this. And so the Spirit answers, well, during the last 20 years, the fifth stage theocrats have manipulated millions of Earth people into believing a cosmology based much more closely on the truth than are the traditional religious mythologies. Instead, damn it. Old age sucks. I'm 41. I'm not old, but like I'm losing my sight, man. Instead of asserting that people have to submit to the will of an omnipotent deity to survive death, they're now saying that individuals can merge with the Godhead on a more equal basis. Wouldn't that be crazy if that was true, though, right? Like you die and you go to heaven and you meet your God that you worship. And that God's like, merge with me. You're one, become one with me. He says they don't need to be recruited, nor do they need to be told telepathically who and what they are. Anybody who is told something different is being deceived. That's a heavy statement. So he asked the Spirit, he said, well, in other words, gods do exist. No, I mean, they will exist, but Earth people should pretend that they don't and should make an effort to reincarnate after physical death. And the Spirit says to him, he goes, we're all doing our best. Now, do you see why we're telling you all this? So he asked the Spirit, he goes, well, isn't there a better way to communicate the information than putting it into a book like this? And the Spirit says, yeah, of course, but it's a good first step. And having the information in coherent verbal form in an earthly language makes it easier to communicate. In an earthly language, makes it easier to communicate it telepathically to large numbers of people. And the more people who read the book and write or talk about the ideas in it, the better. Oh, so actually we're just helping this along by reading this. War in Heaven is just one tiny part of our efforts to spread this information. I wonder, like, we should talk to the Spirit, and I've got some questions. And so then he goes to the Spirit, he says, well, I still don't think that more than a tiny fraction of the Earth's total population will be exposed to this information before the last days arrive, if they happen within the next few decades. And he answers and says, well, what you're thinking is that most Earth people live in third world countries, and because of that, will not be given a chance to decide their fate during the last days. This is a reasonable fear, and it points out one of the greatest problems, timing. Why is that a reasonable fear? What does people's worldly status have to do with that? Like when you die, I mean, I would think that death is the one thing that levels all of us, right? No matter where you're from, where you live, what country you're from, how much money you have, what you look like, all that mundane shit, right? Like I would think that death would level that, but apparently it doesn't. In this world, it matters too. Right? Even if you're some poor person from a third world country. Or I'm interpreting this whole thing wrong. So he asks the Spirit, he says, well, I understand. If the last days come reasonably soon, large numbers of people will have no chance to decide their own fate. But the longer the Earth's population remains at its present level, the more damage will be done to the biosphere. Oh, I guess he's saying because they live in third world countries, they won't get this book or this information, maybe. And so the Spirit answers him and says, you have stated the problem very well. Most of the steps we are taken to solve it involve direct psychic battles with theocrats and elementals, which we will not describe for security reasons. All that you and our other conscious agents on Earth can do is try to spread the verbal information we are giving you and hope for the best. That's all you can do, is just spread the word, hope for the best. That's how we live on Earth, okay? So either you're bleeding through your problem-solving stuff into the spirit world, or this is like BS. You're telling me when we get to the spirit world, like that's all we can do is just hope for the best. That's it, Marla's asking, is this spirit ever named? Pat Bree says, I don't care what comes after death as long as there's cookies. Oreos, to be exact, right? And Jane says, his chapter titles are definitely clickbait. See, this is what I like to see. I want to get everybody thinking. I don't care if you're reading Shakespeare, man. Like, you should have your own thoughts and opinions on everything. And it's funny when you take that into a book, no matter how well it's put together, whether it's a movie, a book, a play, or a conversation or whatever, you begin to learn that thinking on your own is the best thing that you could ever do in your entire life, right? So he asks the Spirit, he says, are you willing to talk about when the last days will occur? No, Spirit says. They could happen tomorrow or in 200 years. It's best for you not to speculate about timing in print. Please summarize what you want me to tell people that will increase their chance for survival. And when he means survival, I think he's talking about surviving the theocratic thing, right? Well, no, he's not. He's probably talking about earthly. I get confused. This book confuses me. Maybe he's talking about both. So he answers, he says, everyone who understands and accepts the basic information in this book should make a conscious effort to develop his or her own psychic powers during life. Well, I think you guys should do that anyways, regardless of if this book is right or not. It's a basic survival skill that every human being needs to know, and the rudiments of it are not that hard to learn. The majority of occult and New Age groups are capable of teaching a person enough basic psychic skills to attract the attention of friendly spirits on the astral plane after death. And if such a group isn't available, people can learn such skills by working with almost anyone who already possesses them. Just trial and error. Just like you said before, just shop it around. However, we want to make it clear that the process requires a real effort, applied regularly over several years. Regularly. We also have another word of caution for people who have accepted the information in War in Heaven as true, but are not serious occultists with highly developed psychic powers. They should read accounts of point-of-death experiences and learn to recognize the common tricks that theocrats use to enslave the unwary after death, and he underlines that. This is a... You remember that show I did with, I think it was Wayne Bush, it's called Tricked by the Light? It wasn't, I don't know if that was the guy that was on Art Bell that was saying, don't go to the light, it's a trick. That was kind of a fun show to do, but that was fun. Like, this is a serious matter. Like, I think, seriously, I do. I think this is a serious matter. I think, because we have a listener that's about to pass away at some point soon. He's still staying in touch and talking and stuff, but and he picks up this book. This is a bit more serious to me, like. And I'm trying, and I honestly, Gareth, I promise you, I'm not trying to be like confirmation bias about it, or push my opinions into the book. I'm just responding based on what I think is BS and what's not. So he says, I've read all the stories about the dying person being met by spirits who claim to be deceased relatives or friends, deities or messengers of deities. They're to welcome him or her to the afterlife. And I suspect that many people who believe the breakthrough information while living may suddenly forget it when confronted after death with the shade of their beloved mother come to welcome them to heaven. In other words, seeing is believing. A direct emotional confrontation of this type might have more weight than any rational intellectual knowledge received during life, especially to a soul who has just undergone the trauma of dying. And the Spirit says that is an accurate and vivid description. We still lose people that way every day, in spite of our best efforts. This is awful, man. So you guys remember, like, Robert Monroe. Robert Monroe went to see his father in the astral realm. He didn't pass away, but he went to see his father. And he met a younger, I guess, better-looking version of his father, if you guys remember that. And there was, like, he didn't try to trick him or anything like that. Just take this into account to him, just saying. Like, he didn't try to trick him. He didn't try to make him believe anything or get him to worship anything or anything like that. He was just happy to see his son. He said, I feel great. The pain is gone. And they kind of went on about their business, right? So is that different? Like, are you telling me that that didn't happen? Robert Monroe's lying, or the person that he met was his father because it was in the astral realm and he didn't die in the body? Like, there's just a lot of stuff here, you know. So he asked the spirit, he says, what can people do to avoid such deceptions? And the spirit answered him and says, well, the only sure defense is to achieve a certain degree of psychic development, which this is getting redundant. We get that. The theocrats are able to practice such tricks only if the psychic senses of the deceased person are being activated from outside by the theocratic telepathic transmissions. If the person's soul is actively perceiving the astral environment with its own telepathic and clairvoyant powers, it can usually perceive the true nature of the spirits forming the greeting party. This is difficult to put into English, so let's just say they look phony or have bad vibes. The closest we can come to an actual description is that some of the psychic control mechanisms that theocrats use to enslave other spirits on the astral plane become perceptible to anyone who physically reads them actively instead of being communicated with while remaining passive. That would be kind of cool, though, if that's like the one thing that, say, you know how some people say that we're here in a training ground. Like, I talk to my dad about this sometimes. Like, he's got this weird feeling that we're here to be, it's like a Jesus training ground. And if we make it out of the circulation of life after life after life, and we become more aware and we develop our consciousness and our awareness, then we get to go on and be a god of a planet, right? And I think I don't know if it's the Mormons or somebody actually believes that, right? That's a thing in one of the religions, isn't it? So he asked the spirit, he says, this is one of the elements of the breakthrough information that will frighten certain readers, especially when they realize that many of their deceased relatives and friends may be slaves in theocratic bands right now. And suppose such a person does meet his or her dead mother or some other loved one on the astral plane. Oh, he does ask this. He goes, well, the important rule, the spirit says, is keep your distance. Don't let any other spirit touch you as long as you remain on the astral plane. Free spirits merely communicate telepathically. They don't approach other spirits closely, even when they assist them and reincarnating, but instead talk them through the process. Remember, talk, but don't touch. I think that's a good general rule for the Mormon. That's right. I think that's a good general rule for the astral realm, like talk, don't touch. We can feel that stuff when people get too close to us here, right? They're like, ooh, you're getting in my space. Get out of my bubble, man. Let's see. So he says, the spirit, he says, I've never seen this written down before, but it becomes obvious when pointed out. You explained earlier that the theocrats enslave weaker souls by literally attaching themselves to them, allowing energies to flow directly as they do with human nerve tissue, but I didn't realize that the full significance of this until right now. And the spirit says, yes, it's information that can literally save your soul. So there it is, right? Talk, don't touch. That's the information you need to save your soul. And you thought you had to accept Jesus, become aware, ascend, but really the only thing that you need to learn to do is don't touch. Just talk to people. Don't touch them. Yeah. Okay. Well, listen, we've got the short radio break. What we're trying to do is I now need to talk to Marla, and I've already talked to a couple other people about some ideas to keep the radio station going, because the damn thing might, like, we've got some hosts that are paying their dues, but some aren't. So it's really not fair, right? And what I wanted to do was build a community of broadcasters where we all got kind of it's all even, baby. It's all the same. But it's getting to the point where some people can, others can't. So that's kind of why, like, we need your donations, stuff like that. If it does, I will tell you this, because some people have directly asked me this. If anything happens to the radio station, the Fringe FM, like as far as the station, like this radio stream is concerned, I'm not going to stop doing my show for nothing, right? I might turn it into something else. It's just those people are my family, right? And so are the listeners. So I fight hard and strong in the end, but I don't go down easy either, right? I can't help it. All right. And I'll open up the phone lines too if you want to chime in, right? We could stop this whole reading and just talk about this BS if you want to. It's not all BS, by the way. I don't think it's all BS at all. I think some of it is true, but I also think that, and I want to tell you guys about why I think he's right about that look, don't touch thing, because I had some pretty freaky experiences in the astral realm with that and in the dream world too. We'll be right back too. We have like just a couple of commercials that we have to play, and we got another, I think, a sponsor that might be coming on with us with some really cool stuff. So stay with us. Don't go anywhere.
Be more favorable? How about, are our two signs compatible? Each month at the new moon, you can ask these questions live with me, your astrologer psychic, Mary DeCina, along with host of Lighting the Void, Joe Root. Join us at the new moon for Cosmic Conditions. We look forward to working with your energy.
Every new moon at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern, right here on Fringe FM.
The Fringe FM isn't just a radio station. We also provide services for all your audio production needs. If you are interested in live radio or pre-recorded podcasts, we're here to help. We even do audio enhancements and voiceovers if needed. If you want to do a podcast or live radio show and even want the option to syndicate on terrestrial radio, from simple audio file enhancement to live production and call screening, we have you covered. We have worked with some of the best professionals in the business in order to provide coaching instruction for content creation, show structure, and more. Contact The Fringe Digital Media for more at info@thefringe.fm. That's info@thefringe.fm, or call 501-777-5631 for a consultation.
Musicians experience a lot of frustration with music marketing and promotion. They have no idea how to get their music heard, and they're spending hours sending emails, making phone calls, and hitting up their friends to promote them. With our industry-powered digital marketing platform, we can set up your media plan in minutes. Our team will automatically distribute your music across all the best channels, so you can focus on actually making the music. Submit your music today on our website at mymusicpromoter.com. That's mymusicpromoter.com.
Do you want to know the truth? Are UFOs real? Are aliens visiting Earth? Are governments around the world hiding the biggest secret in history? We're UFO Seekers, official partner of the Fringe FM, and we're on a hunt for the truth. Join us as we investigate locations like Area 51 by subscribing on YouTube at youtube.com/UFO Seekers.
This portion of the show is being brought to you by Ed's Super Strength Nitro-based Headache Tablet, the headache remedy preferred by 9 out of 14 pre-med students.
I'm 54, so basically, it's too late to start saving for retirement, right?
Not right. Starting to save, even in your 50s, can really make a difference.
Well, right now, saving seems hard to wrap my head around. Plus, with the way this year's been going...
Hey, listen, it's okay. You still got this. Just go to aceyourretirement.org. It's an online tool from AARP that can help you get your retirement savings on track no matter your age. It's free and only takes about 3 minutes.
I like 3 minutes.
Yeah, at aceyourretirement.org, you'll chat with Avo, the friendly digital retirement coach. Just answer a few questions and you'll get a personalized plan and tips to help boost your retirement savings. Tips that are easy to understand and tailored to your lifestyle.
I like that too.
Plus, it's sponsored by AARP, so you know they got your back. Just head to aceyourretirement.org and make your plan to start saving for retirement.
Thanks.
That's aceyourretirement.org. A message from AARP and the Ad Council.
Boy, this is complicated. 2 keyboards, 2 screens. I'm trying to get back and forth just to get back on the broadcast here. Sirionification. Wow, this is a fantastic, a live one. Yeah, we've been doing this live for a minute on video now, so we'll get. So I switch stuff up. Sometimes I get guests on. Sometimes we do books. Sometimes I rant. Sometimes I try to get you guys to call in, talk to you guys all night. It's never. I'm learning that listeners like to have the same things over and over and over again. It's like a comfort thing, I think. But I can dig that because I'm a person who loves stability and comfort. That's what, even though I'm a bit crazy, that's what I like. So I get it. So I'm trying to work on some stuff to where we can all have these little firesides every night here. YouTube sides, whatever. So, yeah, we're live on the Fringe FM. The call-in number is 501-777-5631. Feel free to call in and chime in at any point in time if you want to pitch in, talk about this. But you could text that number too, but I'm probably not going to see it. The only thing that I'm even going to glance at is right now is the YouTube chat because that's all I can handle. But if you want to chime in, you can call in at that number. Also, you can listen on the Fringe FM. Sometimes we have replays. We have great music there. We need a little help with the programming. So, like, look, if you want to be a part of the station, you're more than welcome to, right? I thought about turning it into some kind of like co-op thing, you know, because it's supposed to be a community thing. But program directors and stuff like that, I've had people offer to write, but then later you find out that they're just like hitting AI buttons and changing a few words. So it's fun. I love radio, by the way. Don't forget to check out the Typical Skeptic podcast. I want to thank him for having me on. Make sure you follow him and subscribe. He's doing some really good work over there, too. The guy is authentic. It's a genuine curiosity. It was very nice of him to ask me to come on his show. So, let's see where we left off. And where did we leave off here? Yeah. But I wanted to say this too, like I've had my own experiences when I was a kid. I would have things touch me in the I guess it was the dream world, the astral realm, and weird stuff, bad stuff would happen, you know, even in the, like, especially if you're like astral traveling, when you touch something or you get next to something. I think he's totally right about that. So talk, but don't touch. Wouldn't that be crazy though, if that's how we had to spend all of eternity, right? Like we go into this realm, but you know, touching people here, we have like skin and stuff, so we're fine unless we just don't want to be touched. But crazy energetic things happen in the astral realm if you get touched, or the dream world. But imagine if like that was an eternal thing. Right, but don't touch me. You know, something bad's gonna happen. Hold on, let me stop this thing. The radio automation's still going here. All right. So talk but don't touch. I'm going to tell you guys this before I have. So is anybody having like, I'm testing some psychic stuff out here, okay? Let me ask you guys this real quick. So I had a dream, and I feel like I have to talk about it. Like I'm going to be one of these cats that are on, you know, like they have the YouTube videos where they're doing tarot and all the stuff. Like I think I can do the dream stuff. Sometimes I think I can. So I had this dream that I'm sitting in front of this woman, and I don't know if this is a listener or whatever, but this definitely wasn't me. So I'm sitting in front of this woman, and she's selling all her stuff like a yard sale. And if this is you, hit me up, okay? So we're like in this cul-de-sac. We're at her house, and I'm sitting down talking to her outside, and all this stuff comes out in the yard sale, and then she's crying, and her boob kind of flops out, right? And I don't look at it because to me this is like a vulnerable thing, right? What's up, Paul? This is somebody showing their vulnerability. So I'm looking at her in her eyes, and I'm like, lady, you know, your boob popped out, right? And her friend's kind of pointing, and she's like, well, I'm sorry, and then flips it up, and she's crying. And what she's crying about is, one, that she feels extremely vulnerable, and two, like her life feels like it's falling apart so bad that she's having to like have yard sales and sell stuff. So if that's you, the dream turned out that everything was going to be okay. Or like at the end, people started coming and buying stuff, right? And then I think, if I remember correctly, I should have brought my journal with me here, but I think everything turned out okay. But I don't want to go deeper into the dream because it gets a little touchy. So if that's you, hit me up. I got some information for you. It ain't me, man. Sometimes I have weird dreams. It's like, what the hell was that about? I got to get JM DeBoard back on here and pick this stuff apart. All right. Talk but don't touch in the astral realm. Okay, he says, well, I've never seen this written down before, but it becomes obvious when pointed out. You explained it earlier that theocrats enslave weaker souls by literally attaching themselves to them, allowing energy to flow directly as they do within human nerve tissue, but I didn't realize the significance until now. This information can literally save your soul. Unfortunately, it is difficult to communicate warnings like this to Earth people, as it is for parents to warn their children about child molesters. It's not hard to tell them, don't get into cars with strangers or accept presents from anyone you don't know, but much harder to deal with the fact that a large number of molestation cases involve close friends or family members. That's true. All we can do is repeat that it is a universal custom among non-theocratic spirits to always keep their distance from one another. It's sad that we do have to do this, but the theocrats give us no choice. So here's the thing, right? Listen, if you go into the astral realm or whatever, or let's say you pass away and, spirits come around you and they're keeping their distance, they're probably cool. But if you got one of these like encroachers that just keep coming and you're like, get out of my bubble, and they're just trying to, you ever met a person that's like that too? You get that crazy feeling. Like there's some people that they have to stand like right in your face and just no matter where you go, they just kind of keep shifting to get in your, it's the weirdest thing ever. It's uncomfortable as hell too. But they're saying that it's sad that we have to do this, but theocrats give us no choice. And the most important thing about this is that it requires psychic skill, not just intellectual knowledge. The more conscious control that people develop over their psychic senses and powers during this life, the better chance they have of surviving on the astral plane. after death long enough to reincarnate. And disembodied spirits see by clairvoyance, communicate by telepathy, and move by telekinesis. If you don't have conscious control over these psychic powers, you may be blind, dumb, and paralyzed after death. Interesting. If you're lucky, you'll discover after you reach the astral plane that your soul contains residual memories from a previous life. They give you access to these powers, but it's best not to bet the life of your mortal soul on it. Well, yeah. Learning psychic skills is a lot of work, but we strongly recommend it to everyone who makes the breakthrough. Possessing intellectual knowledge about the nature of spiritual reality is not as essential to survival after death as having a basic psychic skill. I would drum roll for that one. I totally agree. Like, we talk a lot about this stuff, don't we? But how many people are actually void walking? How many people are practicing this stuff? It's just like swinging a bat or doing anything else. You get good at anything you practice if you don't. We still recommend that you learn as much about the subject as possible, and from this book and all other available sources. The more you study the facts about theocracy, the invisible war, and spiritual cosmology, the higher the probability that you will remember some of this information when you need it the most. The time of greatest danger on the astral plane is immediately after death. And when the astral soul, great, Gareth, I'm sure you wanted to hear that. And when the astral soul is still traumatized by the shock of separating from the somatic soul, theocratic propaganda has created the myth that some deaths are easy and natural, and that only sudden or violent deaths are traumatic. God, this is terrible. You know, like, let me finish this and I'll come. It says, in reality, the snapping of the silver cord is a big shock to the astral soul, as the loss of a leg is to the body. It's true that some deaths are more traumatic than others, but none are ever easy. On the other hand, the worst thing people can do when they die is to refuse to admit that they're dead. There's a universal myth that people can prevent death if their will to live is strong enough, so they fight the process with all their strength and courage. Our advice to people who feel they might be dying is to remain as calm as they can, concentrating all their attention on remaining conscious and alert, not on fighting to remain alive. You'll lose nothing by doing this because in most cases there is absolutely nothing you can do by an act of conscious will to stop the physical process of death if you are indeed dying. However, vigorously fighting against the death process significantly increases the post-death trauma to the soul, rendering it more vulnerable during the first few crucial hours on the astral plane. Okay, well, have you guys ever talked to somebody that said that they seem like they were happier when they passed away? Like, it's hard for me to think that, or even believe that someone's gonna, it's like say they pass away in their sleep, which a lot of people do, that it's violent and catastrophic and traumatic and all this other stuff. Like, I don't think that. I don't think that's true. Or maybe it's I don't want to think that, but I've heard too many accounts of people that say they look like they went peacefully, so I don't think, like, this would scare the hell out of me too, bro, if I was reading it and at the end stages of my life. Like, I understand. This is crazy. Okay, so we're not doing this for pure entertainment reasons, right? Like, this is a family thing. We got a listener going through this stuff. Okay, so he asks the spirit, he says, in a number of point of death experience accounts, the dying person refused to touch or embrace the spirits he or she encountered, usually because there was some vague feeling that it just wasn't right to do so. However, in other accounts, there is close contact, but it has a negative effect. Painful energy exchange, often compared to an electric shock, occurs, and the person on the point of death has the sense of returning to the body. In still other cases, the greeting spirits themselves refuse close contact and say, go back, your time has not yet come. So how do you explain all this to make it evidence to support the concepts that you're describing? Okay. So the Spirit says, well, the important thing to remember when reading an account of a point of death experience is that the person relating it was never actually dead in the first place. Definitions of physical death are imprecise, but not the definition of death as perceived by spirits. Detachment of the silver cord from the somatic soul, and once this happens, death is irreversible. The astral soul cannot reattach itself. The people who have point of death experiences are simply close to the point where the astral soul detaches from the somatic soul, close enough to attract the attention of other spirits who get ready to receive them into the astral plane. The same physical trauma that brings the person close to death also produces a state of consciousness in which the physical mind is extremely passive and the astral mind is awake and active, allowing easy psychic communication with spirits. We should point out that only old souls, those at a high stage of spiritual development, have such experiences. This is why such people sometimes recoil from contact with spirits. Their psychic perception is keen enough to spot that something is wrong. However, even if this doesn't happen, close contact with the other spirit still cannot result in theocratic enslavement. The soul of the dying person remains attached to the body and continues to receive energy from it through the silver cord. Is this energy that produces the electric shock, or this is the energy that produces the electric shock effect if contact does occur? Of course, most theocrats are knowledgeable enough to refuse such contact themselves to avoid the shock. However, theocrats vary in knowledge, so both kinds of point of death experiences occur. And this ends our transmission on the war in heaven. It's now up to you to complete the book by talking about the concepts of spiritual revolution and what it means to be an individual. So is this he's not talking to the spirit anymore? This is crazy. Like this. All right. So here's the thing. What's up, Jess? What's up, My Alchemical Romance? I'd love to see you cover negative blood types and their abilities. I mean, so look, this is there are some things I think that could be true that he's talking about here when it comes to some of the concepts that he's talking about, but not this soul sucking thing. The silver cord thing to me is like, I've actually tried to experience the silver cord in itself, and I can assure you beyond a reasonable doubt, with all confidence in my heart, mind, and soul, that I was out of body and there was no silver cord attached to me. Not that, like, I remember it was one of the things that I was trying to figure out because people talk about it. There are some people that have been out of body that say it doesn't exist, and other people that do say it exists. So if there are people that say it do and there are people that say it don't, then that is a flag that lets us know that this is probably a perception thing and it's all BS, in my opinion, right? Like, this is like talking to somebody who can't get their story straight. Or if you go into a room and, I don't know, 10 people say one thing and 10 people say another and 10 other people say another thing, you're not going to know the truth. Like, this is where we have to understand when we read a book, no matter how well it's written, no matter how many things seem to be true about it, no matter how much we're trying to, I would even say, entertain our minds with certain things. Like, you have to go back to logic and say, this guy wrote a book who is saying that he understands everything that is happening in the spiritual and astral realm, everything, all the way back to the beginning of mankind, and that he knows this based on a spirit that he's having a conversation with, which in fact is telling all of us that there are everything we've ever been told is an illusion. There's only two factions, and this is coming from a polar human being, we have to remember. There's only two factions in heaven, and that they're fighting each other, both kind of manipulating us, And one wants to use your soul as an energy source so they don't have to reincarnate, and other people are trying to help you become more sovereign. Like, I just want you to think about that for a minute. I'm not saying be closed-minded, but think about that for a minute. Sure, I mean, everything is possible, right? But this is why I think, like, we have to do this on our own. And I do believe from the bottom of my heart, and this is me talking here, okay, that the only way we're going to fight any of this stuff or actually get to the truth or actually find out any of this stuff is not interpreting spirit messages. It's not reading books like Manly P. Hall says. You have to experience it to know it. That's what gnosis kind of is, right? You have to know something is different. Like, we may never know what happens after we die or all this other stuff. None of us may ever know. But if it's not going to hurt. And this is where I agree with the guy in the book. The biggest thing I agree with him, it's definitely not going to hurt at the least, and probably will help us at the very, I guess you could say most or whatever, to develop our consciousness, develop our awareness, and practice this stuff while we're on Earth. Just like William Buellman said, if you think about it, when you have a dream or you go into the astral realm, everything that you do there is like instantaneous. It's scary instantaneous. If you have an emotion, you'll experience it there, right? Or if you have thoughts about stuff, everything happens so fast, especially thought and emotion. So here on Earth, the things that are slowed down to a dense vibration, and we live in a world of cause and effect where I can do something and my intentions could be good or bad, but the effect doesn't happen till later. So like, we're like little conscious babies, so we get a body so we can see what happens. Kind of like, if you manipulate people or whatever, that's what a lot of people want to do. They get here and they say, well, life is a game. I want to learn how to manipulate it. And that involves me manipulating this or that and people and all this other stuff. So we get to learn this. We've all done this, right? We get to learn this. So we do these things, and then slowly but surely the effect happens, and we see, damn, that didn't work, or I can't manipulate these laws and these things. And I think these same laws happen that fast when you're like in a dream state or in the astral realm. So I think we keep coming back here doing this over and over and over again until we get it down to a science so that we're ready to do the other thing, whatever that other thing is. Steven Skinner says, hey, Joe, you're from your southern neighbor in the boot. Are you from Louisiana, brother? They just beat the dog crap out of us in basketball. And Arkansas did, I never thought I would say that again. I thought I was going to be a Florida Gator forever. Maybe I'll go back. We have to take one more break, but I'm interested in what he's saying about the breakthrough here. Toward a general breakthrough. And this is the author talking. He says, well, I would like to begin this final part of the book by directly addressing the individual reader. And now that you've read this far, you are in a position to decide for yourself if the basic thesis of War in Heaven is true or false. And if you've already made a firm decision to reject it, you might as well stop here. We're not going to stop, dude. If you write something, it's just like me broadcasting on YouTube and saying, well, if you don't believe everything that I've done throughout all of my shows, I'm still going to broadcast, but you might as well just stop watching. Now, I have a morbid curiosity to see how far you're going to go into your confirmation bias. And if you're going to write it down and put it out in the public, I'm going to read it, so I'm not stopping. The rest of the book is intended for readers who either accept most of the theories or are still trying to make up their minds. Just out of curiosity. And I don't have any I guess, judgment about it. But are any of you guys actually considering that this guy's telling the truth? Like all the truth? Paul from Newcastle says, I've never seen a cord. Yeah, me neither. Never seen a cord. Well, let's see. Now, keep in mind the rest of what we're reading is going to be only if you believe everything he just said. That's kind of a trick, right? Because that makes me want to read it more. If you're still with me, you may be saying to yourself, the author doesn't seem to care very much if readers accept the ideas of this book or not. I totally don't believe that. I think that you've tried to convince us in very subtle ways to believe it and that you do care. And this is strange because he obviously believes his own theories and has done his best to present them logically and to support them with evidence. If he doesn't want the readers to accept his hypotheses as true, what does he want? Actually, he says, I'm happy every time I hear from a reader who has given my thesis careful and rational thought and agrees with its essential points. However, I still want to make it clear that War in Heaven is not intended to attract a cult following of people who accept its theories as a rigid ideology. Well, this guy was thinking real highly of himself, wasn't he? That'd be like me saying, I put out one show for like a year and me saying, now I don't want you to believe everything I say and I'm not trying to get a cult following or anything. Like, dude, I didn't even know about your book in 2023 until a listener told me about it, right? So I don't think you have a cult following. We're all special here. I get it, but we're all not more special than other people. He says, for example, some of the readers who rejected various points in Spiritual Revolution were surprised that I didn't argue with them very vigorously. If I thought they had failed to understand completely what a passage meant, I gave them further explanations, but I didn't try to change their minds by persuasion and emotional pressure. Well, I hope not, because that would be preaching. This is a book, right? Many readers said something like this. The theories in your book are logical and internally self-consistent. The theories in your book are not logical, by the way. I don't know where you're getting that from. But I can't find much evidence from my own reading on spiritual subjects to substantiate them. Did a reader really say that to you? Come on. In fact, just about every religious and occult book I've read contains specific refutations of one or more of your contentions. You say that plenty of evidence to support your theories is available in the literature. Can you send me a list of books that contain it? Preferably one that tells what pages the relevant evidence is on? Well, naturally, when you write a book, you're supposed to put your sources in the end of it anyways. I don't know why anybody would ask you that. It's like the references in the end of the book, the index, most people cite their sources, but there's no way that you could prove any of this. Like, that totally sounded like, that doesn't sound like a reader at all, does it? Or a listener. Does it? He's speaking exactly, and I'm not just talking about his language. I'm talking about how the conversation is going he had with his so-called listener. That listener does everything exactly the way he does. He says, I have absolutely and categorically refused to do this. One of the ways the Western education system closes people's minds is to convince them that theories or opinions are valid by exposing them to carefully selected and edited pieces of information that look like objective evidence but are actually slanted to support a particular conclusion. I don't get this, man. Like, why is he talking about evidence? Your whole book is based on your conversation with a spirit that nobody can see, touch, smell, hear, feel. Like this dude lost me here. Like, this lets me know there's some kind of manipulation going on here. No one's even considering. Did you? Because I didn't. I don't know about you, but I didn't. Like, I wasn't thinking this was going to be a book where you were going to give me evidence that you were telling the truth at all, whatsoever. He says, this is exactly the opposite of what the Invisible College wants my writings to do. The purpose of this book is to help people think rationally and without bias about spirituality by changing their previous viewpoints, whatever those may be, and offering the material I have received from my spirit guides as an alternative. Yeah. He says, so I have sketched out a minimum of evidence to support the theories as I have presented them, but this is not intended to be conclusive proof. Instead, it's just a sample of what the evidence looks like to assist readers in going out on their own and searching for more. It's this searching process and passing of value judgments on the evidence found that can help people to make the breakthrough. Here is a dialogue with my spirit guides on the subject. I thought we were done with your Invisible College spirit guides. Does anybody else talk to the Invisible College, and do they say stuff like this? Because if they do, like, I want to hear from you. Yeah, I think he said authors. I think he did, actually. It's just weird, man. Like, you don't have to be super intelligent to pick apart when someone's BSing you. Like, don't you, like, when you get to a certain age, like, lying doesn't really serve you anymore, does it? It's not that you can't lie or you've never lied or you're too good to lie. It's just too much damn work to lie. Like, I'm too lazy for it. And when I do, I feel like shit. And I'll usually go tell the truth because I don't want to cover up the tracks later down the road. And like, is that maturity? Maybe, I don't know. But like, if you have to explain yourself this much, I wouldn't be calling anything that you're doing evidence. Jesus Christ. Sorry, that stuff gets on my nerves, man. It's like when someone commits to a lie so much, they double down. You know, I'm not saying everything he's saying is a lie, but if you're really not trying to convince us, why write a freaking paragraph about how you're not trying to convince us, and then fake what your readers are actually saying to you? I actually have seen that in podcast. I had a radio, man, I don't even want to say that because that person might be listening. But I've seen podcasters and radio hosts do it where they'll fake like emails or listeners. Well, this listener said this to me or this person said that. And I'm like, why the hell are you doing that? And they admitted to me it was fake, right? They're like, well, you know, that was just fake. I'm just trying to put on a show and do a certain. And I'm like, what are you doing, man? You know, like that doesn't make any sense to me. Grow the hell up. I sound like a damn old man, parent, butthead now, don't I? Or at least give us like the what is it called? The thing where it says this is for entertainment purposes only. Yeah, give us a disclosure agreement. No. That's what you do when you lie. You just keep running up that hill, don't you? There you go, John. We'll be right back. We got to take a very small break, and then we'll see what the Invisible College says to him about all this. Or is it just him? Yourself and those around you from the effects of electromagnetic radiation and recharge your body with life energy. This is your chance to take control of your balance, your quality of life, and your future. The effects of syntropic products have been verified from a scientific point of view and can be backed up with research. This is future technology, a biotech enterprise with breakthrough technologies that facilitate the protection, regeneration, and recharging of both human and animal populations. These patented wellness devices can help optimize energy and performance, speed up regeneration, and protect you from the harmful effects of non-thermal e-smog. Get back to feeling your best with a new level of clarity, vitality, and balance with the advanced and effective products of Centropics. It's as Albert Einstein said, the future is here, and future medicine will be the medicine of frequencies. Get started on your wellness journey by going to advancedwellnesstechnology.com or fringe.fm/bioenergy.
Honorary Forest Ranger Betty White here, lending a hand to my dear friend Smokey Bear, because for years he's only said,
only you can prevent wildfires.
But there's a lot more to say. Like if you park your car on tall, dry grass, the hot exhaust pipe can start a wildfire. So keep the animals safe, especially the cute shirtless one. Go to SmokeyBear.com to learn more about wildfire prevention. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the ad comes.
Have you ever wondered, what do the stars say for me? Or, will the next month or the next year be more favorable? How about, are our two signs compatible? Each month, at the new moon, you can ask these questions live with me, your astrologer psychic, Mary DeCina, along with host of Lighting the Void, Joe Root. Join us at the new moon for Cosmic Conditions. We look forward to working with your energy.
Every new moon at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern, right here on Fringe FM.
This is Rev Dan Lopez from Spiritual Warrior Today Radio, and you're listening to KTLK, The Fringe FM.
This portion of the show is being brought to you by Ed's all-new decaffeinated shampoo, the only shampoo that is guaranteed not to keep your hair awake at night.
What I know about courage, I learned from my adoptive mom. She said sometimes you just gotta hold on and know we'll get through this. Mom, we are so high up. Hold my hand.
No, you hold my hand.
Here we go.
Learn about adopting a teen from foster care. You can't imagine the reward. Visit adoptuskids.org to find out more.
I learned patience from my adoptive dad. All he had to say was,
"Hey, you got this. Just breathe." Hey, we're pretty good.
Yeah.
Might have to start a band.
I got it.
Learn about adopting a teen from foster care. You can't imagine the reward. Visit adoptuskids.org to find out more. This message is brought to you by Adopt US Kids, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, and the Ad Council.
This portion of the show is being brought to you by Shifty Ed's Homebody Checks for people who never go anywhere but still want the protection of traveler's checks. Remember that Shifty Ed's Homebody Checks. Don't stay home without them.
You're listening to Lighting the Void Radio.
Welcome back to Lighting the Void Radio. I'm your host, Joe Root, live on the Fringe FM. 501-777-5631 is the call-in number. And so far, the video broadcasting has been fun. It's getting... I'm going to have to figure out, like, something faster. It's crazy. If you could see... One day I'll have to do, like, an above view where you can see I got, like, 2 keyboards and 2 mixers, and I'm running everything, trying to figure out how to get both on the station and both like to video. So let's see. Let's look and see what you guys are saying here. What's up, Joyce? Hi. Syrianification says, I'd like to invite you to explore books by Jason Brashears. He has a channel, Archaics. He's a great chronologist. We are mortal beings. What you read sounds of fear porn. Matter of perspective. I agree with you. Like, it is fear porn. That's what it is. Like, if I could go in here and annihilate all fear porn and BS, I would. But, that would take down half of all the streams, probably. But for us, like, we just want to know the truth, man. We want to figure out how to explore consciously and, like, do it, and then figure out what's going on. So, let's see. We got 20 minutes here, so we're gonna now. I want you to hear how this works, okay? And I've been saying this since the beginning. To talk about evidence, that shouldn't even be a discussion in this book. There should be no discussion on evidence to begin with. If you're talking about, I'm getting messages from a spiritual being. But he's saying, like, unless we believe what he's saying is not to read further on. Okay. You guys have to understand, like, how well messages get relayed, right? In other words, if I really want to convince you of something, I have to be able to present it very well in a very convincing way. That's what most people do, right? We're in the age, I don't know if it's the age of Aquarius, but we're in the age of the influencer. And so now we're in a predicament, right, where we've got 9 million influencers out there. Well, not in this community. That's more like OnlyFans and stuff. Let's say we got 50,000 influencers in this realm, and they're all not saying the same things. So when someone gives you a really good presentation, it doesn't really matter if they're telling you the truth or not. It's just easy to bite on it. Like, seminar speakers know this stuff. You guys ever go to seminars? They're fun to go to. But you have to know that there's a psychological process that's happening there, Stephen Skinner says, my heart goes out to your listener with the concerns of this book, but for what it's worth, little resonates with me. Exactly, man. Like, if it's the dawning of the end of this human experience, it's only the beginning. Right on, brother. Yeah. And that's the whole point, man. And Word Salad said the author does write like Stephen King. Yeah, man, he does. It's like, now that I've told you this horrifying story, I want you to not read on further if you don't believe me. And I've had listeners reach out, and let me just break this down for you in layman redneck terms, okay? And I want you to know, I've had listeners reach out to me and tell me that, why don't you cite your evidence and stuff? And I just wholeheartedly don't talk to them about it. Come on. I have a morbid curiosity of what your spirit's going to say now, okay? Here's a dialogue with my spirit guides on the subject. It'd be more fun if I took the Art Bell approach here, right? But I would have to have, like, on the Rockies line, if you were a member of the Invisible College or a theocrat, call this number, Like, you ain't doing that right now. You can do that later. We're trying to take care of one of our own. So he asked the spirit, he says, the Invisible College intends the act of reading War in Heaven to have similar effects to being injected with a weekend disease germ that causes the system to develop antibodies against the disease itself. We really don't care if people consciously reject the theories in our book. Listen, wait, this is the spirit saying this in our book. I didn't think it was you said it was your book earlier. Anyways, whatever. Because we know that the ideas will sink into the subconscious and may eventually increase resistance to theocratic propaganda and mind control. The primary purpose of this book is teaching people to think about spirituality in ways that were previously unthinkable. Oh, so your primary purpose of the book is not to tell us that, is not to save our souls, right? It's just to scare us so much by putting this crazy story in our minds that we start thinking for ourselves. Well, why don't you just say that? So he asked the spirit, he says, yes, and it's obvious to me there's more to making the breakthrough than merely accepting the information about theocracy and the war in heaven presented in this book. My personal cosmological beliefs were reasonably close to the theories described in part 2 and 3 for years before I made the breakthrough. And so were my opinions on spiritual politics. I've been calling myself a spiritual revolutionary since the 60s, but until 1983, I lacked a theoretical frame of reference for assembling my knowledge and opinions into coherent explanation that I could use to answer my further questions about spiritual reality. And the spirit says, well, you did know much of this information necessary to make the breakthrough, but you didn't know it in a very useful form. The important facts were so mixed with erroneous and irrelevant material that it was impossible for you to recognize what was important and what wasn't. This kept you from using your knowledge to form theoretical conclusions and make value judgments that would have given you a full conscious awareness of the war in heaven. In other words, he says to the spirit, I had sufficient information to answer all of my own questions about spiritual reality, but I didn't know I had it. I've been aware all through the writing of this book that one of my major goals is to help the reader avoid the same problem. For every single fact I list, I have to mention several false answers for the same question that are part of the available knowledge. And the spirit says this, and this is a long one. I mean, I'm at a point where, all right, this is all curiosity to me at this point. He says, of course, and most of them are deliberate deceptions the theocrats have planted in people's subconscious minds to keep them from making the breakthrough. You know what? Look, here's what's really going on. This guy understands the subconscious. He understands manipulation, and he understands all of these things. And he's afraid. That's the truth, author. You're afraid that because you now understand how the subconscious works, how neural programming works, and how people come up with their own beliefs and their own values and all this stuff, that you have a fear that they're going to create an earth and possibly an afterlife that you don't accept because they've been manipulated, because they're not as aware as you are, which I understand that fear, being around people that are not either as mature about certain things or aware about certain things as you are. But you still have to let people find out stuff for themselves. Like, to go this far to try to, I'm going to scare the hell out of you so you'll think for yourself. I mean, I would rather be beaten than have somebody go to this extent than to manipulate me like this, you know. But fear begets fear, you know. Jason calls it dungeon programming. He has lots of evidence. His book and video playlist, The Lost Pyramid of Giza. Dungeon, I have to check that out. Dungeon programming. However, there is more to a breakthrough than just encountering the essential facts and theory and concluding it seems to be true on the basis of the available evidence. What fucking evidence are you talking about? Do we have a different definition of evidence here? People who make the complete breakthrough will be able to take the introductory material presented in this book, and use it creatively to draw correct conclusions from other information on the subject they already know or will learn later. Discriminating between true and false spiritual information and theory has to be an intuitive process rather than one performed by the conscious intellect. One has to learn simply to know if something is true or false, important or irrelevant. This sounds very abstract in words, but what it really means is that we teach people subconscious mental programs for processing spiritual data logically, and they call the resulting output intuition. I don't know if that's a very good definition of intuition. I had to think about that for a minute. We intend the reading War in Heaven will make it easier for certain people to acquire this programming from our telepathic transmissions. For example, if you yourself had read a book like this any time in the late 70s, you would have made your own breakthrough very quickly and easily. Some people made the breakthrough because of reading Spiritual Revolution, and we hope that this new book will be even more effective. However, we still don't expect the majority of people who read War in Heaven to accept it as true, or the majority of those who accept it to make the breakthrough right away. This book is just one small item in a major campaign by the Invisible College to enable large numbers of Earth people to make the breakthrough within the next few years. The spiritual information appearing in hundreds of different books and songs, often in coded or subliminal forms, is part of our campaign. War in Heaven already identifies some of this literature and music, and we encourage readers to look for more on their own. The search will help them form the subconscious information processing programs needed to make the breakthrough. We do not intend that War in Heaven supersedes all these hundreds of other books just because it contains more explicitly stated information than any one of them. Does it now? Does it really? How many spiritual books have you read? That's a big statement to make there, brother. I mean, I love confidence, but I've read a lot of other books that give me better theories with better stuff. People still need to read the other books to develop their correct patterns of thinking. Even more important, many of these works contain vulnerable information about theocracy and other subjects of use to spiritual revolutionaries that are not in this book. The two types of books that contain breakthrough-related information are the overt ones, of which War in Heaven is the first, and the subliminal ones, are intended not to compete, but to reinforce one another. Blah, blah, blah. We worked well with this. I'm skipping some of this, man. Because this is like... You're just trying to convince us here. We are now also trying to use the New Age spiritual development groups to help large number of people make breakthroughs. Okay, so that's all an invisible college manipulation too. We are preparing people in the New Age movement to make it to a breakthrough. Blah, blah, blah. This is getting redundant. Fragments of important information about theocracy and the War in Heaven appear in many advanced occult books, though often expressed in a form that is extremely difficult to understand. For example, most books by members of the modern occult traditions derived from the old Masons and Rosicrucians use analogies drawn from Judeo-Christianity, both its mainstream and its heresies. There are endless complex references to holy guardian angels, Elohim, pre-Adamites, daemons, the Kabbalistic tree of life, the Logos, and Gnosis, etc. It often takes years for students to learn this complicated mythology, and by the time they've mastered it, they've usually picked up so much egotism and paranoia along the way that they never make the breakthrough in the same senses that you have made it. Conscious spiritual revolutionaries who work with such occult groups should try to translate the terms they usually use into the type of analogies and technical terms in this book. The terms in War in Heaven are drawn from modern science instead of modern science, instead of from religious and occult tradition, and they describe spiritual realities more accurately than the traditional terminology. They're also much easier to learn and use because they are internally self-consistent. Occultists, New Agers, and everyone else involved with anti-theocratic spiritual systems often find it difficult to set aside the beliefs based on faith that their particular system has accidentally borrowed from theocratic religion when it borrowed useful operational psychic techniques or valid spiritual knowledge. Yada, yada, yada. You guys can read this, though. I can leave a link to this book if you want to read all this complex nonsense here. Like, all this is just more of him talking about, this is why we did this, the subconscious mind. We're programming all this stuff. Everything is a big program. We're trying to wake people up. There's only two factions, the Invisible College and the Technocrats. There's a big war going on. We're trying to help people. We've manipulated everything, all the way down from the music to the 60s and everything. Like, here's the answer to all your conspiracies. The end. That's it. We don't have to do any more searching, right? We don't have to do any more I think this author is attempting to rip off Gene Roddenberry. I was actually thinking that too. One of the games I play with my son is Warframe, because I like sci-fi games, so I play Warframe and Destiny and stuff. And I'm thinking, even the stories in these video games, it sounds like they ripped it off from this book, right? Or he ripped off the stories. Here's the thing. Occult knowledge and all the stuff that we know alchemically is in nature. Manly P. Hall said this. You don't have to read books. You don't have to study religions. You don't have to go find a master or any of that. The alchemical laws and these hermetic laws as well are all throughout nature. They work on finitely and infinitely, as above, so below. They just are there. So this is why, you know, we can study nature, we can study alchemy, we can meditate, we can do all this stuff, and we don't ever have to worry about some war. You know, I'm getting a bit redundant here too, even though there's some other books that this guy's lining up with. I want, because he has additional information here, right? That says, he has an alien interview I want to get into just out of morbid curiosity. Beelzebub tells to his grandson, "Is your God a devil?" The Matrix intro, notes for War in Heaven, and Robert Boyle and the Invisible College, and the nature of spiritual reality. This is all stuff we got to get into. But before I get out of here, I want you guys to remember that one of the best books that I ever came across that had to do with this was Psychic Self-Defense. Okay. And I think Dion Fortune was like a long time. She was one of the greatest voidwalkers of all. So she studied the occult. She studied all kinds of things. She practiced them. She had plenty of experience. And when she wrote Psychic Self-Defense, she knew beyond the shadow of a doubt that there were two things that people did to psychically attack you, right? Those things are simple. They implant ideas of fear and doubt into your mind. That's one form of attack, right? We could just call it a psychological attack. But if you want to look at this on an energetic level, anytime someone plants fear and doubt and things into your mind, it's not to protect you most of the time. When you really look into it, if they're not empowering you or telling you to think for yourself, most of the time they have their own agenda. Secondly, the second energy was your sexual energy. So this is why I say there's a lot of stuff in this book that kind of relates to some of the truths that I've experienced, you know. Now, I'm not saying what Dion Fortune's teaching about psychic self-defense is 100% true and real, but what I can say is based on my own experience. That's it. Not evidence or anything else. My own experience, what she's talking about is real as far as psychic self-defense. So when a guy writes a book and he's not only planting little seeds of fear all over the place, but he's also admitting to you that, hey, I'm working with your subconscious mind here, because we got to do that. So you'll understand that you're not very aware. You don't understand how your subconscious mind works, and that scares me. Because to me, I'm smarter than you, and I understand how all this stuff works. And you're like a little child that's running around, and you're going to mess up this earth, and you're going to mess up the afterlife. That's what I hear him saying, right? I think every one of you guys are very smart and intelligent and spiritually aware to figure this stuff out for yourself, especially you, Gareth. We love you, brother. And stay in touch. I have no idea. We might get into some of this Matrix stuff tomorrow. I feel like a rebel. I feel like I'm like the anti-conspiracy guy right now. It's kind of exciting. All right, make sure that you please support the Fringe FM to keep it fair for everybody. Please, if you haven't supported, if those that you have, wait a month before you support again, if you can, at least wait 30 days. And those that have been here for a while that have never supported, throw in a little bit. That helps out all the hosts on the network too. We love you. Good night. Sweet dreams.